out there in no man's land, out there in potential, there's threat and like mortal threat, but there's also endless opportunity and riches and wealth and the possibility of attracting someone and all of that. And so, well, the dragon, you can't just be afraid of it, you just stay in your burrow the whole time. And lots of animals more or less do that, you know, especially the nocturnal ones, they just hide away. But that isn't what human beings are like, because we're not only prey animals, right, we're also predators. And then of course we're crazy, we're absolutely insane chimpanzees, right, we're crazy. And so we're always out there mucking about with things and with our, you know, fingers and our thumbs and taking the world apart and putting it back together, and we're crazily exploratory and troublemaking. And so we don't just run from dragons, we go hunt them down. And so there's a story here. There's the oldest story that mankind knows, and literally it is the oldest story that we know, is this story. And the story basically is there's a bounded space, a walled garden, a walled city, you know, and all the original cities were walled, because if they weren't, barbarians would swoop in and they'd just steal all your stuff. And so, you know, that was kind of pointless. So, you know, you wanted to have some major league walls surrounding your territory, and so that's inhabited space, and inside that is your little dominance hierarchy. And so all you primates knew exactly who was who inside that space, so you didn't have to fight with each other, and you could predict each other's behavior because you believed the same things and saw the world roughly the same way and acted the same way, and so you were sort of secure. But then the problem is that that can always be breached. There's always something outside of it that's a danger, and so that's signified by this little creature here, this dragon. And that twirl in its tail is very common among dragons. It's actually a symbol, because imagistic languages, imagistic symbols have an ancient language, and it's referring to something that's basically eternal. And see, it lives down here in this cave because it's an underground thing. It's an underground thing, and you can kind of imagine what that's like. And sometimes this happens in initiation rituals among archaic people. When they're going to initiate, usually the young men, because nature initiates women all by itself, usually the young men, maybe they'll put them in a cave and leave them there, you know, for like, well, who knows how long. And so you got to think, what's in a cave? Now, caves are dark, man. I don't know if you've ever been in one, but like they're dark, and they're really dark. And so not only is there whatever there is in the cave, and you don't know what the hell's in the cave, there's whatever you imagine might be in the cave. And so when you're in that cave and you're alone, you're confronting the devils and demons and monsters of your own imagination, you know. And so then you have a chance to perhaps deal with that and overcome it, and that's perhaps part of the initiation ceremony, you know, and that's part of growing up, because you have to learn how to face the things that terrify and upset you and recast them and put them back together. We talked a little bit about this idea of the pre-cosmogonic chaos that Iliad refers to, and that's the stuff out of which order is produced at the beginning of time, and it's also the stuff out of which you constantly reproduce order. And the Jungians, the psychoanalysts, especially the really deep psychoanalysts like Jung, Freud was a more surface psychoanalyst, and that's not an insult. There's some things that Freud figured out that are absolutely amazing. He was a precursor to Jung for sure. For Jung, the hero's journey was the journey inside the unconscious, and that would be perhaps in some sense that the willingness to face everything terrible that's happened to you and to think it through and to articulate it and to come to grips perhaps with your own capacity for malevolence. That was a really important part of Jungian ideas, that the first step towards individuation, which is the manifestation of your full self, let's say, was the discovery of your shadow. And your shadow is the part of you that will do terrible things under the right circumstances, and maybe even without that much provocation. And you know, and it's a terrifying part of you to come into contact with, because it's sort of the way that you're specifically attached to the archetype of evil. That's a good way of thinking about it. And you know, modern people, they don't really think much about the idea of good and evil, but that's because most of them are so damn naive you can just barely even comprehend it.